Muy buenas, chavales. Sed bienvenidos a un nuevo episodio de All the Mods 10. En este capítulo planeo crear el motor de vapor más grande de todo Create y finalmente completar el propio Create. Oh, and I hope editing KSAW is putting in translations for the intro because I would like the people who do not speak Spanish to also know what I'm up to. And in case you didn't catch it, I really want to make this little label here green, which would entail completing every single quest. And hopefully I have interesting things to add along the way. So let's get started with the simple stuff first and move on to some more interesting options down the line. The windmill sail happens to be another alternative source of power that requires nothing particular to function. You can simply put it along a shaft and a bearing and it will start spinning stuff. All you really need to get started is one of these windmill bearings, and that was the last of a shaft unfortunately. And you should be able to stack your windmill sails on top of this to produce a windmill. If I right click this, it says 8 windmill sails are required. That however is no problem for me because I've just made a bunch, and if I just sort of spam these around, it should eventually reach the number 8, and slowly, ever so slowly, the contraption begins to turn. Now, thanks to the provision of the engineer's goggles in my head slot, I can tell you that I'm currently producing 512 SCU at the current speed, and I can up the speed or the generation capacity by adding more sails, so why not try that? Isn't it beautiful? No, it's a little bit lopsided, but I wonder if that changed anything. And sure enough it did. Not only am I going faster, I'm also producing a larger number of stress units, 3,584 to be exact. Cool. Next up on the list happens to be basins, and the Humble Basin is a rather useful block in Create, simply because of its utility in I think 4 or 5 different use cases, and I guess hitting U on this bad boy would be the perfect way to show them off. Yeah, 5 of them. Not only can it mix and create brewed potions, it can also compact blocks using a mechanical press. It can also do some shapeless crafting recipes. For example, it can crush ores into their counterparts. It can also mix with some heated things using blaze burners, which I'll get to in the future. It's also the intended way to make brass in Create. And it can also compact things like honey into honey blocks and calcite into diorite, snow into ice, so on and so forth. But then again, I have really rather little use for this at the moment. And I promise, even though these things are rather useless to me as I'm standing here showing it off to you guys, I'll use most of them in the future. In the rather near future. Andesite funnels are cool because if you have a setup like so across a belt, if you place down an andesite funnel, not only does it cover your belts, but if you have a connection going off to the side like so, hold on, if I can even place all of these. This funnel will, or this tunnel rather, will split off one item on the side belt and let the rest continue onwards. This is rather useful for setting up things like circular recipes where one item needs to be looped to be duped, and then the duped item can move forward. And that's probably the only time I've ever used an andesite funnel, or tunnel rather, I keep messing that up, silly me. I find much more utility in the brass tunnel, but we will get there when we get there. Next on the little short to-do list happens to be a fan, which takes a propeller, which takes plates, and the intended way for creating plates is using the mechanical press on a depot, and that will crush it for you. Fortunately for me, I have immersive engineering do it for me. And this is the recipe for an encased fan. This happens to be another one of those cool blocks that I'll be using later, but I do want to point out that this finds a bunch of different uses, not only for shapeless crafting, because applying facades is cool, I guess. It also, depending on the block you put in front of it and the direction this guy's spinning, can change items into their well-washed forms or their smoked forms for cooking, their haunted forms, so lapis lazuli can turn into this, and yeah, there's a bunch of conversions you can do, and regular ink into glow ink is something I've used in the past. And also bulk smelting. Really useful. Next up, the mechanical harvester. This guy I'm gonna skip for now because you're gonna see me set up a farm with these later. Next up, one of my favorite wood farms early game, the mechanical saw. Now this guy can be powered with a hand crank, if I even have a hand crank. Can I make a hand crank? Is that an option? I think it's allowed. Yeah, let's just show this off. I have just RTP'd many blocks away just to show this off, but if you place down a mechanical saw facing a piece of wood, especially when it's attached to a tree, you can put a hand crank on it and spin this bad boy, and at the cost of a little bit of your hunger, chop down entire trees. Just like that. You know, that feature alone is pretty cool, but I'm fairly certain if you join multiple trees together, you can fool Create Mod into thinking that the trees are attached and chopping down one should chop down the other. And I should be able to demonstrate by destroying both of these trees at once. Ta-da! That tree and that tree went together all at once. And so you can basically deforest entire lands with this if you just walk around hooking the trees together. Chop down one tree, and they all fall down. Plows, however, are not as useful to me right now other than that little quest marker in the top right, but these bad boys do find some use in cart-based contraptions where you have a deployer placing down rails that the machine rolls along on, and there's one of these bad boys, the plows, catching all the rails as they pop out. And that causes the minecart contraption to forever move in a direction of choice, and especially for drills, that is a really neat feature. And lastly, the block that you should generally be starting off with is the mechanical press. One of these bad boys needs an iron block, which is rather expensive on your first hour. But hey, the mechanical press uses stress to go bonk. It goes bonk on depots and produces sheets. It can also do shapeless crafting, I guess. And it can do compacting recipes. In iron plates, for example, I'm using the metal press from Immersive Engineering. They can also be produced using the pressing process. Yeah, I do also want to go ahead and craft up one of these mechanical mixers, and this guy needs a whisk. I haven't made one of those before, because obviously I don't have the mixer, but hey, now I do. And the mixer is, like I mentioned earlier, the intended way to make brass in a basin. It'll be one of the mixing recipes, and it'll be heated mixing. Copper and zinc together makes brass. And this is where our old friend the blaze burner comes in. Now, there's some mysterious conversion that happens here, and that is the process of making a regular empty blaze burner into a full blaze burner. That involves blazes, quite obviously. And this isn't exactly spoilers, but you can always press W to ponder, and this will tell you that you gotta right click a blaze, or alternatively, you can go up to a spawner and right click a spawner, and then you have a blaze burner that you can use as a heat source. And you can also just set fire to them for aesthetic purposes. And this happens to be one of those times where I'm actually glad that my nether spawn was right next to a nether fortress. At least from my old base. And yet this still happens to be my only nether portal in this world. I don't use this anymore thanks to my waystone over there, but I should have a blaze spawner somewhere here. There we are. I should be able to yoink this with the Silk Touch pickaxe. Head on out. And this little cubicle will be this guy's resting space. I've already hit this with a redstone comparator, and that means that it is controlled via redstone and no blazes should ever spawn, but I should still be able to right click this to fill up my blaze burner. Quest's completed. I, however, promised automation, and automation you shall receive. And that means I get to place down a deployer. I was hoping it'd be facing downwards, but that's nothing a wrench can't fix actually, now think about it. Is that in my system then? Yeah, wrench please. And thank you. The Create Mod wrench, which lets me rotate these blocks around. Perfect. And a couple of gearboxes and some shafts means that this deployer is now constantly poking the blaze spawner. Now, if you can put two together, one can imagine that if the deployer can right click there, that means the deployer can also right click here, and sure enough, if I give this deployer a blaze spawner, there you go, it fills the blaze spawner. And if only there was a way I showed off of automating the inputs and outputs from deployers in the past. All I've got to do now is teach the system how to make one of these, and then I can simply hook this guy up with an export bus. Like this guy? With a crafting card, of course. Have I just filtered it to an export bus? I have. Excellent job, KSAW. And now I should be able to take one of those little cables, put them here. And this guy can now eat as many blaze burners as it wants. Now, to pull the items out of this guy, I want to use one of these create brass funnels, because I can intrinsically set an item filter on this, and as you can see currently, this thing is spitting out all of the empty blaze burners. The moment I click one of these on, it's going to have to wait, and then spit out the new one. And because this thing is constantly spitting these items out, that means I can put an interface up there, and simply put that there, and the interface will now pick up all of the items I have just placed and made a mess. This interface I can then connect over here, and I will slowly end up with all of these blaze burners in my system. Perfect. I was getting rid of these at some point. Now, not only is this device unfortunately rather unsightly because of its orientation being pushed so far to the right, I think I can offset it by having an item display for an empty blaze burner or something. If I can grab it out of this guy's hands, put that there, maybe bring a little bit of attention to the center, but this will also run indefinitely and constantly keep producing whatever the filled blaze burners and clog up my entire system, and I don't want that. And with that, I would like to point out a second way to automate processes, and especially passive ones, using create. In this case, we used threshold switches and automatically turned off the farm's inputs when we wanted the results to stop. In this case here, I would like the inputs to be constant, which is why I'm using an export bus, but I can also interrupt the rotational power. For example, if the shaft doesn't exist, then the deployer cannot work, regardless of what it's holding currently. And that functionality is given to us so generously by a clutch. A clutch stops working if a redstone signal is applied. And fortunately for us, the ME system happens to allow the use of level emitters generate redstone signals based on the current outputs. So if I hook this up properly, which happens to be like so, such that the level emitter is actually pointing into this, and as you can see by default it's off, I think I would like to keep 16 blaze burners in stock right now, and I believe I have more than 16. So that means that if I have more than 16 blaze burners in stock, this will turn on, which will interrupt the power to the blaze burner producer, and we will have no more blaze burners automated. However, if I just happen to... oh, I've already made so many. If I just happen to take all of these, I will then go back up to 16. And you know what? I'm going to use these as decoration. So why not? Yeah. Sure. Let's just do that. And already, even in just that little short period of time, I've made 16 more. It's a neat little system I got here. Especially because it's currently filling up with blaze burners, and it'll craft a stack at a time. Cool. And you know what? I am sure these will eventually run out, but I can always just feed them a little bit of wood to make them nice and happy. And with mechanical arms done last episode, and now blaze burners, I think it's time for us to set up the big ol' create steam engine. But first, you gotta watch me craft the rest of the create components. We got the intake chain drive, gear shift, gantry carriage, rope pulley, piston extension pole, the mechanical piston, which uses the piston extension pole, weight ejectors, super glue, which is going to later, the radial chassis, the schematic cable, of course, a schematic cannon, a speedometer, which then turns into a stressometer, the adjustable chain gear shift brass tunnels, portable storage interfaces, of which I like two, the hose pulley, the spout, and the portable fluid interface. And so finally, after a little bit of prep work, as you can see on my hotbar, we can move into setting up the max size level 18 steam engine. You're gonna need 9 blaze burners, just like so, and then a 3x3x8 tank that goes upwards from that. So you can just place this down and expand it like so, up until you get 72 total tanks, and it's 8 blocks tall. Next up, I would like to drag out a cable that connects up to an interface on the face of this big old behemoth of a boiler, and this interface will be responsible for requesting all of the water that I'm going to be feeding this guy. I might need a bigger interface, but that's alright. I will put down mechanical pumps like so, and then connect all of these together exactly like that. Now, using a couple of cogs, I should be able to power both of these so that they can pump water into here, and if they're spinning the wrong way, I can always take a wrench and flip their directions around, just like any old machine. You can tell because of the arrow. Next up, I will need 18 of these outputs, and of course I'm currently not using anything, so they're just gonna be hanging out here. I sure hope I have enough space on this face, which I do, and of course these have nothing on them at the moment because, well, you need to put shafts on. Sorta like that. And lo and behold, suddenly I'm getting kinetic outputs for each and every single one of these. And slightly disorienting with all the random directions they're going in, but it doesn't matter just yet. I can hook these all up later. For the next step, I'm gonna have a brass funnel pulling items out of this interface, which means I have to hit it with a wrench and putting them onto this little depot right here. This depot will serve as a take item spot for this guy, and then I will have to make a hole to access all of the 9 blaze burners, which will be then fed blaze cake. So you get a deposit, and so do the other 8. And this guy gets a take from over here, and I guess I can put this guy down right over here. Has 1 inputs and 9 outputs, and once this is provided with sufficient amounts of power, it will automatically take this and try to round robin between everything else. I can click and hold an edit and say force round robin. Perfect. And after some janktastic wire routing, I have managed to make myself a level 9 steam engine. As you can see, it is lacking 50% of the heat, and that is because it is currently fueled by none other than our beautiful friend coal. Coal is coming from my system thanks to this interface, and this guy had to be set to round robin instead of force round robin, but it is now completely working. As you can see, all of the steam engines are doing their thing, but they are outputting half of their expected amounts, and thus we get a level 9 steam engine. I am rather notably using a rotation speed controller, and this guy lets me set the target RPM as well as direction of motion for the rotation of the blocks behind it. And if I set this too low, my pumps will be too slow to keep up with the water demand, and will eventually turn off, and that will happen rather quickly because this tank goes through a lot of steam really fast. If this would be barely holding on, I can just turn it completely off basically, and this tank should stall completely. So to cold start a boiler such as this, as you can see, I have the lowest amount of heat because none of my blaze burners have any fuel in them. My mechanical arm cannot give any fuel because it's not receiving any power, and I can't hand crank the entire system to start because everything is overstressed. Most notably, that is using a lot of stress. I can disconnect the arm side of the equation, just power on the pumps, and of course alone, it's not enough to power the rotational speed controller, but as I keep doing this, I should be at some point able to slap a gear on here and everything's overstressed again. And this happens to be a power loop that can be fixed with a little bit of manual intervention just by feeding a few of these. Disconnecting this again. And once I turn this back on, I will have a much more powerful steam engine that can actually power its own mechanical arms. And as you can see, that little guy down there just went a little bit crazy, feeding everybody everything. And now, after a little bit of hand turning, as the steam engine's turned on, I can do this and have that all connect up together. Suddenly the boiler is back at level 9. That's how you troubleshoot one of these bad boys. It's either not got enough fuel, not got enough power, or just not got enough water. There's only so many things that can go wrong. And now, you know, although this is a nice looking steam engine and it's cranking out a lot of SCUs on all of these kinetic outputs, even though I'm not using any of them, it's doing its thing actually, it's working perfectly, but the problem is it's a level 9 and it's missing about 50% of its heat. These statistics, my friend, are not mas grande. To reach level 18, which is the largest boiler you can make, you have to superheat your blaze burners by feeding them something called blaze cake, which is made via this few step process here. You fill lava into a blaze cake base, which comes from egg, sugar, and cinder flour. Eggs and sugar are really easy, but cinder flour is crushed netherrack. Now, thanks to my previous expeditions, I happen to have infinite netherrack and a rather decent surplus of eggs, so I think this should be fairly simple for me. So step 1 of this process happens to be actually making the crushing wheels, which requires me to have 21 mechanical crafters, and KSAW the Past was kind enough to auto-craft them for me. And looking at this last space here, I think this is the perfect amount of space for one of these, because if it is 3 blocks across, and then 1 block to the side, and then 3 blocks further tall, that is how tall it's gonna end up being. Neat. So I guess I'm just gonna take a quick moment to build up this entire thing. Perfect. That's what I meant by perfectly fits in the space. It's just as tall, leaves an even amount of space. I don't like that though, I just gotta get rid of that one singular block right there. Cool. Now I just gotta add a rotational power to this and orient all of these the right way, because as you can see there's I'm gonna take these off. As you can see, there's arrows that go from the top to the bottom, which means the items flow down this way, and eventually you would like all of them to end up in the same spot, or the same mechanical crafter. So for instance, if we follow this line, it terminates over here. If I rotate this, however, it ends up over here, comes across, and comes down. And I can do the same thing here, spin it around, and it ends up there. Now this should be a valid crafting thing. And to send power all the way up there, I'm simply gonna hijack some from this place right here using one of my favorite blocks, the encased chain drives. Now if I rotate these the proper way, like that, I can then hook up as many of these as I want right next to each other, and as long as they're adjacent and connected horizontally, like so, they will keep transmitting power across one another, like that. And since this lines up, I should be able to just pull a shaft out. Oh, cool, I guess. I came up. Excellent. I can then do this, and hey ho, spinny power right here, right now. Exactly here. For me, yes please. And you know, at present, I am a little bit in the mood to embrace the jank. So, can I do something like this and run a belt diagonally? I can. Would you look at that? Now that is passing power on over there. I should then be able to put a cog down here and here and hope nothing's it is overstressed. Okay, that's a little bit of a problem. Maybe if I gear everything down a level, it'll be better. Because if everything's running a little bit slower, maybe it has an easier time powering everything. So if that means that I have to take, oopsies, a large cogwheel, and then put a small cogwheel down right on next to it, or the other way around actually, I have to take a small cogwheel and put a large cogwheel right on next to it. Let's see if that helps at all. And yep, sure enough, gearing it down just one level was enough stress units for this to start working again. Hooray! Now that means that I get to put andesite alloy around the corners, or around the edges I guess. Put any 4 planks in the interior, and then put andesite in the middle, or any stone, and ever so slowly, you can see how laggy this world is by how jittery this craft is, I will get crushing wheels. There we go. And these can go into the contraption that I'm going to be building in this box here, except I am already running rather low for rotational stress units, thanks to the limited ability of those guys there. Now fortunately for me, I happen to have this behemoth of a steam engine that's powering not only itself, but still has so many thousands of stress units available that I can utilize for a single contraption in that spot there. So by using a bunch of encased chain drives and making a tiny hole in the floor, I should simply be able to route this power underneath the ground and pipe it all around behind these walls and over to there. Now that we have power to this here room that I've built, it is time to actually make the contraption. Now the easiest way in my mind to make these contraptions is to build them backwards. That is, you start where you end up. In my case, I happen to note that I would like the last block in my machine to be an interface that accepts the items that my machine is building. So the interface goes here. On this interface, I would need a brass funnel to put the items in, and eventually also control how many items I let in using a level limiter. Now a combination of this shaft and this belt that I will extend out further will make the platform on which the spout will fill up the empty blaze cakes, and that means the spout will have to go somewhere here. You know what, let's actually just put the spout in the middle, and then the mechanical pump can pull items, or technically lava in this case, from this interface right here. Coolio, I'll accept lava in here, it'll get pumped out, and this belt will be moving this way. And this sort of means that my basin can end up on this block here. If I then go around and right click this guy, you can see that it has its own little spout, and I can also recipe filter this basin to produce only the things I want it to filter. This spout means that the item that it crafts will end up on this belt and end up doing its thing. Mechanical press will go on top because this is a bonk recipe, or compacting recipe I believe they're called. And that's pretty much everything done except for the crushing wheels. I would like the output of the crushing wheels to go in the direction that I'm facing right now, so this way, but the basin is over here. That means I would have a belt going the opposite direction as the belt I'm looking at right now into this basin here. That does however mean I cannot power this belt from the belt next to it using these shenanigans. No, 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 I would have to get its own power source. And in my case, I've chosen to go with 2 cogs. If this belt is going any direction, the belt behind it will be going in the opposite direction. Now to get the items onto this belt, I want to use another belt going this way, and you'll find out why really shortly. Just gotta hook this up here. And in fact, the next few steps would be easier to visualize with some power added, so I have gone ahead and pulled more belts and more shafts so that everything is now spinning in the desired directions. Now, as you can see, this belt and that belt are going in the opposite directions, but this belt has to go towards this belt. And that can simply be achieved with the gearbox. I don't have one on me. Can I make one? Of course I can. This goes here, and voila! This belt is going this way. And now, what was initially the first step using the mechanical crafters is the last step of this machine, the crushing wheels. And this is a little known fun fact: if you put down 2 gearboxes next to a belt that is going in the direction of your choosing, you can then put crushing wheels on top and they would be spinning in the appropriate direction. There you go. Now be careful, if you fall in between them, you will die and all of your items will get crushed in between these. It's a bad time, and I've lost many an item to this guy's spinning power right here. Be careful. I'm being serious. Be careful around these. You will die if you're not careful. Another interface goes down right here with a brass funnel, and oopsies. This guy will be requesting the netherrack. And as you can probably tell, I'm coming rather close to being done here. This guy will be requesting a liquid lava. If I can get my words out. Here we go. And that also means that this guy needs power, and so does that guy there. That was nothing a few cogs, gearboxes, and shafts couldn't fix. Everything is spinning. I believe everything's going the right way. The direction of spinning for the press doesn't matter. It does matter, however, for the pump, and the arrow suggests that all of the items or fluids would be ending up into the spout. I think we're good. This guy would need an inserting bus, or an export bus technically. And this would be exporting my eggs as well as my sugar. And of course, because I'm doing this, I would need a crafting card. Boop. And you know, I have 3 connections right here to my AE system, and I do believe behind all of my MI stuff, I have a singular P2P that is powering all of these machines that is occupying only 29 channels? Where are you? Memory serves me right. It should, yeah, here it is. There you go. Carry channels 29. Perfect. So that means that if I carried the spaghetti properly, everything should just simply kick into gear the moment I connect all of these up. And it seems like I'm producing something and not producing the correct items. What is that? Oopsies. Oh yeah, of course these aren't spinning either. At some point I broke the belt and it stopped that. There we go. I should now be producing cinder flour instead. And I believe I'm making blocks of sugar. But the moment I get my first blaze cakes out, there we go. That's blaze cake numero uno. And I should be able to pick one of these off of the belt here. Just like that. Set that as my recipe filter. Toss this down. There we go. We're getting blaze cakes. Look at this go. And once again, I am going to level emitter this to be blaze cakes. And once there's more than 64 blaze cakes, I want no more blaze cakes to go in. And for this to work, I believe this has to be that sort of mode. Am I doing something wrong here? Oh, never mind. There's just not 64 yet. So I hope this works, and we move on. I can probably check this by making this 32 instead. Yep, it stops, and it should stop taking in any more items. Perfect. Everything should stop, and everything should stop. Set stop. Okay, cool. There's enough items in here, 1 stack of each of the ingredients. The cinder flour has stopped overflowing. Everything is happy. And now I can go back to having a stack in here because that was just a test. And with the final few touches in this room in place, I think it's time for me to swap this guy over to using blaze cakes instead of having coal. If I just remove that and put this in here, and of course take away this coal, now all of these will be blue. And as you can see, cranking up the heat. Full steam ahead. Now, if I put on my engineering goggles, which I believe are in my backpack, you should see a level 18 boiler status max. Steam engine right in front of your eyes, right here, right now. Built by yours truly. Now, with Create being 100% completed, and this big steam engine underneath me roaring with life, it's time for you guys to like and subscribe. And while you're down there in the comment section or in my Discord where I have recently launched an ATM10 server, you can tell me what you would like to see me do with Create. Because moving forward, I would like to make more progress towards the star. In any case guys, this has been KSAW from ATM10, and I'll see you next time. Peace out everybody.